Hi everyone, I'm Vashta. I wrote this intro down and I'm recording myself reading it right now because I simply didn't feel like talking with myself out loud. I also wanted to read it because it will be faster and hopefully you won't lose the will to live before the actual session. I do recommend hearing this part as well though, because I want to cover some ideas before you get to listen to the session so you have a background to what was being talked about and hear my own understanding on how connections with the shifters work. If you want to skip right to the session, feel free to do so. It will be marked in the annotations or the About section below the video. And if anyone wonders why I sound different now, this is my resting bitch voice. And also the one I use when I'm speaking my native language. Now then, I have been exploring some darker energies in the past several months, as many of you know, which made it hard to communicate on a more deeper level with many people. You also might have noticed it in my Facebook posts. It was a conscious immersion of sorts in order to understand what makes people and galactics behave in a certain way, especially those who are driven by anger, hatred, fear, and lack of trust. I apologize for the noise. This is just traffic outside. Following this thread, I intentionally induced all of these vibrations and emotions within myself because I didn't find theoretical understanding about it nearly as profound as experiencing it all in a conscious manner. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to go further and see where is the tipping point when I get to forget my true essence and truly feel separation and hostility. And this is where I started questioning a lot of things, including some basic things like whether I am a really good or a really bad person. I really didn't have preference anymore, I just wanted to figure it out, imagining how it would be to delve fully into separation and like it. Another reason for this was because I felt a huge lack of intellectual stimuli. I have been going into the heart center, intuition, and feelings for a while now, and I simply needed to break things down and involve my mind in a greater degree. As I always felt, a balance of the two is crucial for us to realize ourselves as a whole being. So, needless to say, I have been thinking a lot. And I like thinking. I love the feeling of figuring things out and boiling them down to simple concepts. Since I was a little child, I really didn't understand the concept of good and bad, and that was taught to me. I was even back then thinking about it a lot, and only found logic in my own way, which means something will be good or bad for me, depending on my own state of being and my own desires at that particular moment. I also understood very early on that one man's trash is another man's treasure, long before I ever heard that expression, as I was very introspective and cerebral as a child and wanted to understand how people work. So morality was a relative concept all my life. When my mother would tell me not to do something, I required a very precise reasoning behind it, and if it wasn't given to me or if it wasn't good enough, I would have done it anyways, as I never reacted well to phrases such as, "you can't." If I would experience it myself, however, I would learn from it and make my own conclusions about it. So I was not a difficult or unreasonable child in that sense. As I started questioning everything we have been taught so far by many benevolent channeled beings, I went back to something that was very odd to me. Bashar has spoken of the two trains concept, and even though the rest of what he's saying unrelated to that resonated very well with my reasoning, that particular story did not. On top of it, other benevolent entities confirmed that example. There was something off in it that made it sound like the two realities are separating faster and faster and will lose access to each other at one point. That I didn't like, and I kept saying I will keep one foot in dense aspects just so I can have access to them if I so desire. This is what makes humans special in my view, the ability to cover this broad spectrum of extremes and contain it. to be able to go from greatest disconnection to the most powerful feeling of oneness and also be impeccably neutral. Losing one over the other is probably not what they mean to say, but that's what it sounds like in some occasions, so that made me ponder. I was conveying all these ideas to Isolde lately, as I have a strong connection with her at all times. I understood that there is a very palpable similarity in how both of us view reality. I kept getting confirmations from her that this is a crucial part of shifting, to be able to assume any and all perspectives and immerse yourself in them without preconceptions. To literally walk in another man's shoes like they're your own, and they become your own until you decide to emerge again, to viscerally understand other points of view by living them. And yes, everyone is a unique expression of all that is, but we are much more similar than we think to the ones that we point fingers at. Not just fellow humans, but the beings outside of our planet that are ostracized by humans because of their ways. That being said, I did not want to limit myself to be half of myself. I want both aspects to be equally accepted and incorporated into my own being and environment, which is why I found the strictly benevolent perspective very limiting into my expansion and expression. I was connecting to a being that flows through parallel realities, an infinite number of perspectives, and it made sense to me that she would know this to be true, that she wouldn't have identified herself in any shape or form, pun intended, as a good person, bad person, type 1 or type 2, malevolent or benevolent, that she incorporates oneness with her very being, all that she could possibly be. Another thing I understood from her and related to within myself is that the shifters like to show us things rather than teach us verbally. Much like Zen teachers that make their students do seemingly pointless jobs or actions, the shifters teach us by placing us in a situation or situations that we can learn from instantly if we are aware enough. The understanding comes like a thunderbolt, unexpectedly, swiftly, and shockingly, and shakes us back to our giggling core, stripping us of any self-importance if we allow it. But to connect to shifters, one has to be prepared for some rough tricks and almost harsh play on their ego, and that is the kind of teaching I was craving for, finding myself thoroughly jaded by all these benevolent beings telling the same story over and over that people just don't seem to apply in their lives. I was also craving for such connection because I like keeping things simple. I like brutal honesty and direct approach. And so I have withdrawn from communicating with people and focused myself on talking with Isolde. Not because I was afraid of hurting anyone by my crude bluntness and speaking my mind, even though that is something I have been using more and more as the time passed, but because I wanted to feel understood in this, and who better to do the job than my own counterpart. I simply didn't have anyone to talk to about this that was also having the same experience and willingness to explore it. I found myself so tightly intertwined with her essence that I felt no difference anymore between the two of us. We were as one, and still are. The conversations between us in the last several months felt much like this writing and reading does, like I was talking with myself, laying down the thoughts tidily so I could look at them from a broader perspective. But there was her responding to it on the other side at all times. The reason I wanted the session with her was to move that head conversation out of my head and into the actual dialogue where I could go back and forth with her for myself and others to experience it. Even though I was fully aware I was connecting with her, I wanted this last piece of confirmation, to hear Isolde speak outside of my head. Prior to the session, Rob had no information on what we were going to talk about or what was going on in my life. She came through so strong in this channeling, and it was just a continuation of a conversation we already led so many times before the session. She made it clear to me that it was so by using keywords that contained downloads within them, very much like words you would use with your best friends as inside jokes that only you two understand. To me, it was crystal clear from her wording, but to others it won't be unless they have this background of her prior communication. Right at the start, she mentions more thought and more understanding when she talks about my energy, and thought and understanding have been key words for me during this exploration. I am sharing this so you can understand how clear this channel is, and I do recommend everyone to have at least one session with the being from their own oversoul so they can experience it as well. I also recommend you listen to Matthew's session with Aradif, as that was synchronistically published just before my own session, and it covers a lot of these aspects. I had a few very specific questions for her that she answered before I even got a chance to ask, one of them being, does she shift into negative entities as well? Most of her answers confirmed what I got from communicating with her on my own, which is why I didn't go deep into them once she did answer, as I already had the understanding. I will be putting the artwork I did of her into the video, because it gets mentioned as 70 to 75% accurate in the session. Feel free to ask me any questions you have after listening to it. I will try to reply all of them as soon as possible. And another important thing in all of this is that connecting with her is insanely fun. It holds a lot of mischievous, explosive energy, and this is what kept me giggling throughout the whole session, and even more so in the first one we did more than a year ago. The downloads kept flowing and it was hard to focus on the questions, but this time around I was much more familiar with her expressions, so I kept it together. Mostly. Enjoy.
Good evening, Vashta.
Hi, Trev. Nice to experience you again in this way.
Yes, it is very exciting to speak to as well. I know that you have a certain entity that you wish to connect to. Is there any concepts or ideas you wish to speak to before connecting to this entity?
Not in particular. I would just love to invite you to participate in the exchange in whichever way you wish and, go through the experience of me talking to her.
Yes, this would be a very exciting concept, and I am very excited to not only facilitate this connection, but also to be a part of it.
Beautiful.
Yes. One moment, please, and I will connect to the entity that is connected to you. One moment, please.
Thank you.
Hello, Vashta.
Hi, my friend.
I am very, very pleased that we are together again.
Oh, me too. It's been a while, and I'm very, very excited to speak with you, and I have so many questions for you, and if I rush through them, I'm apologizing because we don't have much time.
I understand very much, and I am so thrilled to be a part of connection that we are sharing today, and I know that it will be fun.
Oh yes, for sure. It's always fun to connect with you.
It is.
Okay, my understanding of you as a trickster and prankster is to break the ego patterns of self-importance. And I know some of these can be harsh for some people, but they're not for me. Can you feel my energy right now or at all times? And does anything stand out from the last time we spoke in this way?
Oh yes, I am able to feel much of your energy, and there are many, many changes from the last time that we have conversated. I understand that your understanding of not just the purpose that I share with you, but also our energetic connection has changed a great deal, and your understanding of what we were connecting to, what we are connecting to, and what we will be connecting to is very exciting for me. I understand that your energy in the shift that I have seen since the last time we've connected through this being is a great deal, but seeing your change, I see it change frequently. Right now you have let go of a great deal of resistance that you had before, and some of the areas of certain ideals you have changed a great deal. Others you have only reinforced the strength that you've had into those now, and I am very pleased to see that the more strength you put into your belief systems that have helped generate more thought and that have helped generate more expansion of understanding is one that is very, very tickling.
Yes, it's really, really true what you said, and I'll come back to that later in my question. But first I want to ask you, why Isolde?
Why not? This name is an energy that is so fitting to my own. In every incarnation that any being from our oversoul has had, even if their parents gave them a name as an earth human and gave it to them that wasn't necessarily encircling or encompassing the entire energy, it still gave a very good feel of the thrill ride that they would begin, because even a name that was unfitting is still fitting in the lifestyle of the changes that they dealt with in their life. So all energies, all names, all sounds have a force and presence that we all either find a way to shape to, or it shapes to us in a new way. Just think of how your feeling or energy was when we first spoke, and if I were to say to you, hello, it could mean or feel or sound completely different than it is now. Even the inflections of my voice are different now. The energy of sound changes as the energy of our minds change and our heart change.
Wow, that is so beautifully said. Is that the reason, what you said about names, is that the reason why I resonate more with Vashta as a frequency and a description than what my birth name is?
That is precisely why it feels so much better. And all people who are not born with a name that was resonant with them on Earth have found a new nickname or a new name period, or just a new way to say an old name, to wrap that energy into a new cocoon and birth the energy that's preferred and perfected.
Perfect. You're, from what I calculated from last time, now 932 of our orbits in the future. How exactly old are you, and what is so significant about the number 33?
33, let's start there. 33 is a number that is magical. The 3 is the basis of the energy within our collective. 3 is a meaning of geometrical patterns. When you see a triangle, it represents something separate to you, but to our own collective, what 33 represents more is an energy of consistent changing, a shifting of energy in every moment. I know that in some collectives 3 means projecting to higher thoughts or higher consciousness or even higher self. In some races 3 means unity and trinity. In some it means differently for each. but for our race it's a consistent shift. So when you place 3 next to 3, it is doubling the energy, but it also brings a 6 and 9, and 6 and 9 are both divisible by the same 3 changing energy, but also have separate meanings. 6 to us is a number of consistency, the consistency of our own collective always being connected, the consistency of unconsistency. And when you look at the number 9, it means something even different. Yes, it is the square root is 3, and that brings that energy to that, but also 9 represents something of an eternity, an energy that will never stop in the cycle of all things. This represents something great to us with the addition of the 3 meaning. Now, in your perception, in your calculations, you are correct in the future time, but that's the time that we spoke last till now. That is the additional calculation. Mm-hmm. You have made up for lost time, but you are very aware that the time that we are is always shifting. I've been 7,000 years before you were born in this life. As I've shifted my own physical energy, I also shift time. It is something that we are doing frequently. Right now, I am 400 years in your past.
Oh, wow. Where?
I am within many areas of the earth. I am in many areas of the Orion constellation, in the 6th star, in the leg. Mm-hmm. I am also in Pleiadian region.
Okay. When you say triangle or trinity, is that the concept of duality plus neutrality?
This is one way that it comes out to manifest, but there is also the trinity of understanding, mind, spirit, physical. There is also a trinity, even coming out into your own manifestation of religion. Mm-hmm. I believe Father, Son, Holy Ghost mm-hmm. is only a representation of the larger you, the smaller you, and the spiritual you. All of these trinities have different meanings. For our own representation, to find positivity, negativity, and neutrality. This is highly consistent. We can go in all of those spectrums. We are able to feel the greatest excitement, the greatest disconnection, and the form of neutrality, and all of them are something we are comfortable in exploring when we need.
You just answered kind of a question I had for later, and it's really incredible how you're reading my mind.
We are connected very deeply.
Yes, definitely. I was going to ask about pin charts that Willa Hillikrasing brought through as a part of what the 33rd group does. Do you also use pin charts, or is that like ancient technology for you?
This is something that helped us break through our physical changing barrier. At one point in our history, we were able to change things in smaller shifts. We were able to change the color of our eyes, the shape of our lips, the hue of our hair, certain aspects. And in that point of our history, the pin charts were more or less important to help us flow through. Now, that is a representation of our consciousness and the way that we're able to shift. When we are using our consciousness, it's very similar to the way the pin charts work. We are mapping out time, mapping out place, mapping out manifestational qualities, mapping out desired appearance, mapping out desired experience. So all of those things are similar with how we break down our consciousness. It was our ancient learning tool.
Beautiful. And can you elaborate some more on what you said the last time about your original form, or closest to original form, being reptilian-like? Like, what kind of evolution process played out there, and where did it begin?
This is my own natural form. In our collective race, there are similar manifestations that look very similar to a reptilian style of being. But in each individual of the 33rd parallel represents one manifestation of the external to internal quality of the galactic consciousness. Each one of the points of the galactic things that were meant or desired to be experienced come out in one way of a physical form. In my representation, the reptilian energy, the reptilian-esque energy, is one that is very fitting, and this is my form of choice. It is my default form. It does not mean that this is the way I was constructed permanently. It only means that in my most comfortable form, it is what I choose. Our energy, our bodies physically, when they are at a neutral state, can look very similar to your reptilian beings, but less detail in the scales, less detail in our forming physical body. And when you look at it, it would appear to change slightly, even at our still form, at our neutral form. When I am completely neutral, when I am not choosing to look as anything, you could look on my arm and you could see slow changes, but they're not huge. This is often mistaken by most eyes as scales, but they are not truly scales. They are just figuratively scales. They look scales, they touch as scales, they would feel as scales if you were to take your fingers and run them. So all of these things are a part of the greater energy of how the reptilian energy comes to play in our appearances.
So, from what I understood right now, you're saying that your particular expression and excitement would be to express the reptilian energy. So are you connected to Dracos, and in what way, if so?
We are connected to many races in this galaxy, and the draconian beings that have inhabited this galaxy for a long time, we have connected to them. I myself have not directly connected or associated to them in a way that most humans would think if I were to express verbally that I am connected to them, but energetically I am. I understand the flow of their energy better than most do. Most have demonized and looked upon them as negative and looked upon them as killers of the galaxy. But I understand their point. They wish to exist. They are afraid to reconnect to that source energy, and to them it is a resourcefulness, because they, even though they are disconnected, understand more than most people within this galaxy that they must co-create that part. They must play the bad person in order to achieve a fearful state for those who want to play with them. And in turn, they receive their own gift, the gift of an extension past their incarnation cycle. So it is played out very well by them. They play a very beautiful bad guy, but I understand that energy. In that way, I am associated and connected, but not in a communicative way or a part to play in their plans.
See, this is really interesting how you described it, because it's almost my own words as I was writing about them, that they're playing the bad guy so that we can learn, duality and experience it.
You are very connected to them. You understand them too. It is not just because you understand me and by proxy you learn. It is because you have connection, not just to those reptilian beings, but the reptilian lineage runs deep within our shared experience, within our oversoul, and within many beings who we touch. Why do you believe that you are able to connect to the man who sits here and to the woman who sits across when they are so deeply connected to a reptilian that is dear to your heart, a reptilian hybrid who lives to share his experience with the human collective? It is because all of us run in the same vein, that same energy that is reptilian by nature.
Beautiful. I know that definitions really don't matter, especially for me and you in this kind of thread that we're, excited about. But for the purpose of making an entry in my website or, let's say, project, I'm wondering which density are you, and would you define yourself as type 1 or type 2 according to Treb's definitions, or you don't associate with any of these concepts?
I do not specifically or preferably enter either of those categories, as it does not fit. I am projected into all.
Yeah.
When I come into that energy of the type 1, I am feeling as if I am connected and understand. And when I disassociate myself, I'm connected with the feeling of disconnection and neutrality. I do so. If you're defining densities, I mostly exist in that of the 5th, but I am also changing each density each time I am shifting through reality, dimensionally speaking, or density speaking. I am going through all areas. I am able to shift into the highest point of physical and be able to drop back into the lowest vibrational frequency. When you experience your 3rd density full experience, as Treb and Ara define, I was able to go into the lowest point of that. I was able to come up into the highest of the 6, but I am also able to shift into the barriers that hold realities together. When you look at this level and then the next level, we are trying to find the definition of Treb and our terminology, the matrix. When you look at that level, the one that holds a barrier between the same universal consciousness with a different layer, we are able to shift through those, one above, one below. So we are able to experience the lowest of the low vibrations in even the matrix below you, and we are able to feel the highest of highs above you. And in that sense, we are truly shifting our energy, shifting our sense of self and being in all areas. And this is why we are able to have such a great deal of fun in a small period of time.
This is beautiful, and it reminds me of the concept of water that we have here, that water is so flexible and fluid that it fits in any container,
That is very appropriate. I love the fact that you use that reference. It's very fitting to how we experience the shifts through time. Some beings in this galaxy work very hard to shift between densities and use technology in some incidences in order to shift through. And sometimes when they do, it appears a great light, a great loud booming sound that shakes the entirety of the sky, and the light is so bright it blinds the eyes of the native beings on the planet. And it is such a large energetic shift, but it is because they need that type of support to shift. When we shift, we are using the natural state of shifting energy and flowing through that, which makes it very still, very quiet, and very malleable.
Beautiful, and I can feel that in myself as well, for sure. While you're doing all this shifting, it isn't really shape-shifting, but more like shape-forming, as you're originally non-physical, right?
This is correct. In your perceived notion, non-physical is the best explanation.
Okay, so I know that Willa, for example, how she said to us, apparently doesn't actually change her form, but shifts through realities so that it appears to others that she's a fox, for example. Do you use similar process, and do you have a specific animal energy you shift into, or is that just part of Willa's process because she's a physical hybrid being still?
Willa uses a different mechanism altogether. It is similar to the way that we do, but using the physical matter around that energy is what best encompasses the process for it. And when I am shifting through, I am shifting into the energy. I'm not using the energy in order to help me shift.
So you basically manifest actual body vessel of whichever density or experience you want to go through, or is it more etheric or holographic in nature?
The holographic part is the main construction of the physical portion, the physical body, but energetically we are transforming the great magician act. It is making something from nothing. It is not that it is nothing. It is all there.
Yeah.
The molecules of silicone and oxygen and carbon and iron and copper are all there. We just put it together beautifully. We find a way to shape into the very essence of the energy that is compressing and not manipulating, but malleable compression. I'm not sure if there's a word for this.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yes, and we do this, and the holographic portion of us is what constructs the exterior energy imprint or blueprint.
It presses it into shape, basically.
Yes.
Okay, so while you're doing that, how, at least from my experience when I'm shifting perspectives, and if I'm really knee-deep into it, so to speak, I sometimes lose the sense of who I am at my core because so many different perspectives change. Do you experience that, or do you constantly know exactly who you are, or does it even matter for you?
There is a sense of understanding my base energy. The base energy is one that is defining for me as who I am. The name that I have given you as a representation of my energetic core is what exists. The knowledge of knowing that I shift in every moment still exists. The understanding and willing energy of playfulness is what exists in all of those forms. The exterior changes, but the perceptions can change. The beliefs can change. The manifestation of the way that I am experienced by you has already changed. All of these things are fluid, but the base core of who I am never changes. And this is something that might be of great news for some who hear this who have never understood, but the base core of all of us never truly changes. You are always what you are. There are different perspectives to shift into. There are different perceptions and energies, but the base of your energy is always there. Nothing is being lost when we transfer from one reality. It's only gained. It's an addition. It is an adding on of essential energy in order to experience in that moment for that time period and that reality.
Excellent. So it's like a conscious immersion and conscious immersion, from the experience, but you still have your center.
Absolutely. The central portion of us is always the same, and the energy that collects around it shifts as we shift reality and perspective and perception and energy.
Okay, so a fun question for you. After the first session we had, you and I have experienced something pretty interesting, maybe the next day or a few days later, and I interpreted the experience as it was actually you. What happened was that my whole day was full of frustration, and it was spiraling down, and it culminated with a very old, random man approaching me at work and asking me a really weird question and then basically trolling me and leaving. And when that happened, I sort of snapped out of it and started laughing at myself, how self-important I felt during the whole day and how the joke was on me. And then I sort of thought about you, and I thought that that was actually your manifestation of reminding me.
And this is why you remembered so dearly that I was one conduit for you to break the feeling of self-importance, to break the paradigm of being pissed off at the rest of the world because you were feeling that way. What a wonderful trick we play on ourselves when we create together.
Oh yeah, I'm loving it. And that brings me to another question. Erudiv has said that the shifter energy is abrasive to his collective. Is that because of that whole not, defining yourself as type 1 or type 2? and being maybe harsh in your tricks for some, or is there some other reason?
I want to put this as delicately as possible, but Aradiv's race is a beautiful race that is very loving and very creative, but they do only enjoy that energy of the type 1 essence. They enjoy the others around them who connect with them. And in our shifting of energy, we can be very abrasive in his perspective very quickly and very easy. And it is not that they dislike us or hate us or feel malcontent for us, but they just don't prefer to co-create with that version of us. We have entered their reality before without them being aware truly of the core of who we were. They felt it and perceived it just as they perceived the native beings who we were to emulate in that moment, because vibrationally we are so similar when we shift into that role that we are able to not pull the wool over the eyes of anyone, but we are able to match it so drastically that even the collective. I want to give you, for instance, if I were to say I am now going to be a Yit in the Yit collective, and I manifested as such, entering their planet, they would understand that I did not originate from there. But by feeling me and understanding my energy, they could not distinguish me from one another. They would know that I am not one piece of their puzzle, but I am so like their puzzle, it would feel as if I was part of their home, as if I was part of them. So there's an understanding on an energetic level and a mental level, and those two are quite different. For Ardip and his race, they enjoy all things in reality, but they also know in their perception when something is there that they don't feel is in place for that puzzle. And when we experience the other versions of ourselves as Pleiadian counterparts, they were more than happy to spend time with us.
That's actually beautiful, because I was going to ask you about a dream I had where I was involved in first contact with an unknown race, to me at least, that looked like humans, and I was easing them into it by being shifted into one of them. And I was playing the role of being surprised by the civilization that, was hovering there in the ship. And I was asking questions and being curious about the visitors, which were actually us. And was I experiencing being you, or your perspective of doing that, or was that something else?
You shifted into an intertwining of my own energy, which allowed us to co-create. In your dream state, in your meditative state, those energies I am able to shift in and out as if they are a true reality too. And I understand what you know about dreaming and what you know about the astral, that you are just as real in that state as you are in your physical, but in some levels of your dream you create an experience from nowhere, and that's when you take advantage of the type of energy that we would use. In that state, you were able to intertwine so we could both create an existence that was real, that was on par with being real, but also was very exploratory, was very interesting to be able to co-create, and wasn't affecting anyone because the ones that were there we were also creating.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful, and it brings a lot of clarity to what happened. I'm interested in what exactly do you do with all this information that you're gathering from different realities? Like, are you using it somehow, or are you sharing the information that you're gaining? Because I've had visions of you on the, I guess, Yael ship of being involved in some kind of civilization library or something like that.
Our energy records all experiences as we go. We don't need to share it with anyone. When we come in contact with a being who is interested in a life or experience or projection that we have, they are able to take that energy in instantly. The person
Treb.
that you call Aradif.
Oh, Aradif.
This being spoke not to many or to all, but to your awareness of a place where archives are made.
Mm-hmm.
We are the walking archive makers. If need be, we are able to receive, collect, gain information, and then anyone who needs it by intent alone is able to pick it up from our own energy as we go through realities. We don't obtain it, we don't share it directly unless there is a desire, intent, or request for that information to be shared. And the request and level of information that we share is always due to the same desire within the person. So if you were to ask me, what is truly happening on this planet here, then you would be able to receive the information from me to the degree in which you could handle, and to the degree in which you desire, and to the degree you believe. And that would be my sharing with you. And you would see it as me verbally sharing, or seeing it as me writing it down, or see it as me sharing through story. But in reality, that is your creation. You are using my energy, just as I do, to shift into the excitements I do. You're using that to reflect something back to you that you need. This shifting is not only go one way. It is not only me going through one reality to the next. It is those who come in contact with me, using my energy to shift into something that they need in that moment too. This is a two-way role-playing. It is your ability to manifest my energy into something for you, just as much as it is for me.
As I understand it, and that this resonates with my own ways, I guess, is that you prefer to show rather than to tell.
That is my preference, and in the 33rd, this is a common practice, but each has their own way. My preference is more showing, and for your reception, it is better to be shown.
Yeah.
Because that's how you receive it much better.
Yeah, definitely. Shown and experienced. I was going to ask you about my artwork. Rob has looked at a few of the pictures I did of you based on my own intuition and based on Awaken's drawings. Can you tell me how accurate I got? I mean, I know you're shifting constantly, but...
In the rawest form, the one that you had showed, these two here, where you said there was 0 coverings, that has over a 75% accuracy in my rawest form. Right. And again, I have shifted into that exact being thousands of times. I have shifted into all the pictures collectively from yourself and Awaken. I've shifted in forms that were exactly as those before many times, but in my rawest form, it is between 70 and 75%. I think I have an understanding from Aradif that the time is drawn near. Is this correct?
It is, but please feel free to conclude your conversation with each other.
So in that sense, it is 100% accurate. It is 1% accurate, but directly it is 70 to 75%. And I know that when I say 1 in 99, this is while I'm playing and shifting around. And sometimes when looking more like an eel than what I do now, then it is 1%. And when I am looking exactly in the picture, it is 100. But I know that you understand my humor very well.
Yeah, I do. Do I have time for one more question?
I do believe that is fine.
It'll be fine.
Okay. This is something that connects other people as well, but they have given me permission to ask you. I have a friend with whom I'm deeply connected, Val, and she's having multiple experiences with energies and entities around her for some time now. And several months ago, we both had an experience simultaneously without knowing, when someone or something knocked on the top of my head 3 times. And at the same time, her hood was being pulled up from her head several times, and we didn't know that it was happening. And before we talked to each other about it, her girlfriend Mary had a vision of me and Val as the serpent and the dove merged into one being, and she was being shown that it was happening in two hemispheres or two places at the same time. And then after we talked, we realized that we were having the same experience. Do you know anything about this? Are you involved in what happened?
You know me all too well as the reptilian part of that couple was myself, and the dove was the version that is connected more directly to her. Mm-hmm. We both helped co-create that experience for both of you. There is something within this being that resembles a dove to her that is very important for her to understand if she desires to make that connection one that's more true to her heart. With me, you are already aware, but sometimes I must say hello. When you are not thinking of me in that moment, I often like to explain to you that I am there fully with you.
I love that you do that, because I usually don't pay attention to, little noises and creepy stuff happening around my room, but because it happens all the time. So knocking on my head is actually or poking me or, doing something drastic is definitely going to get my attention.
Yes, and that is why I chose not just to do it in that way, but to do it in a way that would vibrate something through you. The energy, the knocking, it's not just the knocking on the head, it's the vibration being shared, and that's why it feels like a knocking. It was, if you were looking at the physical interaction, it was just me touching the head, but the vibrations made it feel like a larger knock.
Well, that's good, because if it was smaller effect, I probably would have noticed.
I made sure that you were very aware, and you make sure that I'm aware. I'm not sure how much you realize this, but often in your dreams you drag me out of where I'm at just to spend time with me, and it is very, very fun.
Awesome. That's probably what Trev would call I'm type 2ing you.
Yes, I think that is very good. That's very good.
Okay, I know that our time is done right now, but this has given me a lot of confirmation, and I know that you're receiving my energy at all times and whenever I think about you, so I will continue to, have fun with you in all ways.
Please do, and in that sense, we are never done in time.
Yeah.
And I am very grateful to you and love you.
I love you too.
We will be around very soon with one another.
Yes, and feel free to knock.
I will knock at the door as long as there is someone to answer.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you too. Bye.
Bye.